What is up, everyone out there on Facebook and YouTube and wherever you're watching? Welcome, welcome. I am your host, Dr. Jason Pape, chiropractor extraordinaire, bringing you education, information, motivation, inspiration on the regular. Tonight is no different than the other night. And tonight we're going to talk about chronic disease, why it is, what's going on, why it's happening, and maybe some things we can do to mitigate or even avoid or reverse. Okay. So for those of you who've never seen before, please drop number one in the comments below. Let me know where you're watching from. Say hello. And if you have seen me before, drop a two in the comments below, and that you've come back for more. And if you are watching on replay, feel free to write for replay. And if you don't mind, please feel free to share this out to anyone you think might benefit from our video tonight. So again, I am Dr. Jason Pape, owner of the Vitality Center, the one-stop holistic shop right in Hauppauge in Long Island. So if you're anywhere in the vicinity and feel like seeing us, come on down. I am a chiropractor, functional medicine practitioner, and focus on pediatric sports, neurosensory integration, neuroscience. That's my thing. So, but tonight we do education, information, motivation, inspiration on the regular. Tonight we're going to talk a little bit about education and information as we get a little bit more into chronic disease. It's been in the news a lot more than than past because people are talking about it a little bit more because of our current new HHS secretary. But chronic disease is something that we've been seeing a lot more and more over the decades, and we're going to talk about why that might happen and maybe why the traditional medicine route is not really working. All right. So without further ado, I will get rolling here. Let me just get some of my stuff. By the way, if you haven't followed us already, all our stuff is on the bottom right there, where you can I give a little finger there? You can click us on our little link tree up there. I just got off a little webinar with my mentor who was doing a thing about one of the new company's biology. We did a whole thing with her a month or two ago. So I'll pop that link up there next, actually. If you're interested in learning more about the biology, this is a super amazing line, super clean, highly researched, optimal supplement line out there. Probably my new favorite go-to. And so click on that if you're interested in that. And as always, if you want to know what these are, drop 100, red 100 in the comments, and I'll get back to you with some information. So again, as y'all jump on here, please feel free to comment, say hello. Let me know you're there, where you're watching from. All right. Chronic disease. Let's pop up the old, let's get the old slide on there, shall we? Bang. Chronic disease unpacked, guys. Start your journey to a healthier you. So when we talk about chronic illness, we're talking about these diseases that are not communicable, right? This is not the strep throat or the flu. This is an illness that comes on. Many times they'll say they don't know, or it's genetic, or caused by a virus, maybe, but no one really understands maybe the true genesis of where these things come from. But people are afflicted with them, and it can be anywhere from an arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, or lupus, or you deal with other things like Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis and ADD and ADHD and autism and cancer. These are all MS. These are all really chronic diseases, chronic illness. They don't truly have, it's not like, hey, I caught a cold, I got sick, I got better, or hey, I gave you this disease, right? No one's you don't just catch cancer from somebody. You don't just catch lupus from somebody, right? That's what a communicable disease is, with those things you can catch. This is what chronic disease are not, things you can catch. And usually they don't have any they call them chronic because it's not something that comes and goes. It is something that, and you resolve, it's something that your body is fighting forever or eventually may win, right? So when we talk about chronic illness, we've seen the rise of that over the decades. And one thing, you could argue that we see a lot less of these deadly communicable diseases at the same time. And the fact is, when traditional medicine became more popular, it was based off a paradigm of treating illness that was communicable. And the fact is, You can't treat chronic disease the same way you treat communicable diseases, and that's the problem with the medical establishment is they're treating these things like this. And in general, traditional medicine is a pill for every ill, right? If you're sick, here's a drug to make the symptom go away or make the thing look normal in the blood work, whatever it is. And if those things are normal, you must be okay. We know better than that, right? When it comes to true holistic care, you understand it's not just about making a number look pretty on your blood work. It's not just about making a symptom go away. It's on getting rid of the cause of that problem. All right. So when we deal with these chronic illnesses, the question is why, right? What's happened? Well, in striving to make us healthier, if you will, and in trying to do things to circumvent the threat or fear of communicable diseases, all right, we have really put our bodies into a place where they shouldn't be and causing chronic illness. You know, you say you're sacrificing one to get another, to save another. So what does that mean? So let's talk about that a little bit. We have been if you look at us from a historical perspective, one of the big reasons why, you know, people died in the past was illness, right? And we're not talking about chronic illness. We're talking about diseases, right? And that's why we have all these things. We have all these antibiotics to kill bacteria, and we have all these vaccines, if you will, to help prevent these terrible diseases, right? Well, by doing all these things and constantly trying to short circuit maybe a short circuit is not the right word. It winds up short circuiting the system, but maybe circumventing the system in a way that we think is the best to help the body, we hurt the body in the long run. So, you know, we learn sometimes, you know, the body is an amazing system, right? It is so intricate. There's so many pieces. There's so many pathways and mechanisms and so many things that we learn more and more about every day, right? And what we know about the body today, we didn't know about the body 10 years ago. We didn't know about it 30 years ago, 100 years ago. And the fact is, though, we still treat the body in many ways, in ways that we learned early on. And we have, let's talk about vaccines in general. Traditional vaccines were, okay, your immune system would make these antibodies when it fights something, right? So if we could find a way to give your body those same antibodies before they see the disease, they can maybe prevent you from getting the disease or having a very minimal effect of it, right? And that's technically what a vaccine does. But we didn't really understand when they first came out about the two different types of immunity, and permanent versus temporary, in a way that we do now with a Th1 versus Th2 immune system. We didn't also understand about or not to the extent we do now, about the immune system's ability to learn and to adapt. We didn't also really understand how interrelated the nervous and immune systems were, right? All these things, and I can keep going on and on, all the different cytokines, all the different mechanisms have, over the last 50 years, let's say, it's night and day. And they even say, like, if you're in immunology, right, that's your field. If you miss 1 month of like papers that come out, like the journals, and you're doing research, you might as well throw your research away, because you probably miss something that changes your research, right? Like it's such a fast changing science. You have to be on top of your game. Okay. That being said, if you look at the theory behind vaccine science, which started hundreds of years ago, really, with when they try to use cowpox to stop smallpox, which didn't work. That's where the word vaccine comes from the vax comes from the word of cow, right? Like in French, vache, V-A-C-H, vaccine. Get it? Cow. Anyway, is immunizations. A lot of that science came way before all the changes we made, yet our vaccine science really hasn't shifted, and our thought process to them hasn't shifted either. And the thought process is these things, we did some basic studies, maybe only checked them for a few weeks. We think they're safe. And the science has proven. Well, by the way, science is never settled, ever. Okay? So understand that anyone that tells you science about anything is truly settled is kind of BSing you. Any scientist would tell you that nothing's ever truly settled. We can keep proving a theory over and over and over again, And the more you prove it and the more you challenge it and prove it to be correct, the more likely you can call it settled science. But there's really no truly settled science. So that's the problem to begin with. And as soon as you start thinking like that, you lose objectivity and you no longer have science anymore. You have opinion and you have dogma. In fact, the scientific theory, the whole point of science and proving hypotheses correct and incorrect is to try to truly figure out what's valid and what's not, and not to move an agenda. But I digress. So my point is, instead of looking at, okay, did the science change or did the technique change with the science? And a lot of times it hasn't. And we think it's settled, and yet we keep doing things over and over. And I mean, wonder what it does to the body when you start adding in one more after one more after one more vaccine or whatever it may be. And the fact is, our immune systems, our nervous systems, our body knows what to do, folks. All right. And at the end of the day, the more you bring the body away from how we evolved and what our genetic makeup is over thousands of generations, how we evolved, and move it towards something different. And the more you try to intervene with things that are synthetic, that are foreign to the body, that mess with pathways specifically instead of modulating, big difference I'll go into later, the more likely you're going to drive the body to a fail point. And then once you hit a fail point, you get a disease. So far, y'all pick up what I'm putting down. If you do, pick a number 3 in the comments below. All right. And as always, please feel free to share this out. So we are amazing adaptive organisms. All right. It's not survival of the fittest, it's survival of the most adaptable. Right. Your ancestors, my ancestors, were able to adapt to their environment optimally before they procreated, so you all could be here. And it worked, right? If our ancestors didn't adapt, you wouldn't have made you. Well, you're their kids and then your other ancestors, and you wouldn't be here, right? So our brains and bodies know how to adapt to challenges and tries to overcome it by making it easier on itself. But the body will always try to adapt until it can't. It's adapt or fail, adapt or die. And eventually, when there's too much challenge over too long or too many places, and it's too many things for the body to deal with at once, or is overcome with too much stuff, you hit a fail point. Now, all of us genetically have some kind of fail point, right? But I don't want to wait to figure out what it is by getting it, right? My goal is to how much can I take off the system so I'm not stressing the system in a way that it can't adapt anymore, all right? And then you have a fail point and you have the chronic disease. And people talk about maladapting versus adapting. And I would say that maladaptation is basically looking at something that you think should adapt a certain way, and it is not adapting the way you want it to. But at the end of the day, the body can only adapt the best it can in the situation it is. And if you push it too far the wrong way, you could call that a maladaptation, but it really is the body trying to rectify and right the ship, right? And the more you put things in that push you away from baseline, push you away from optimal, push you away from genetic predispositions and I shouldn't say that, from genetic evolutionary norms, the more likely the body has to try to adapt to compensate for that until it can't anymore. All right. So, and when that happens, you hit a fail point and you get an issue, and that issue can cause more issues. You can get a host of issues. All right. And at the end of the day, there is a word, and we'll use different words to define it, that helps to understand that. And the fact is, it's about stress. And I don't like to use the word stress all the time because I think it has people think about stress like, oh, I'm having a rough day, or oh, I'm panicking, or that's not stress. That is a form of stress. But all challenges to the body, all load, things that you add to the system that makes the body has to adapt to things are stressors. Okay. They can be physical, they can be chemical, they can be emotional. You could even take emotional, mental, and split up into 2 different things and make 4 of it, right? Chemical, physical, emotional, and mental. Now, again, they're really kind of the same thing, mental, emotional, but we can separate them if you'd like. But at the end of the day, those 3 legs of that chair. So any one or 3 or both or 3 of those things, when they're being challenged too much, can lead to adaptive failure. Okay. So understand that it's the load. So I use this all the time in analogy, and it's about, you have a cup, you have a nice cup, right? And it's empty. Okay. So imagine your cup's empty. That's great. A lot of times people say, oh, fill your cup. We're not talking about the motivational, inspirational portion. We're talking about stress. So, like, if your cup is empty, we could look at that as being no stress. So the more you put things into your cup, the more you fill the cup, the closer it gets to its limit, right? So the more stressors come into the body, emotional, more stressors that come into the body, I don't know what just happened there, physical, chemical, emotional, right? The more load, the more things come in, things the body doesn't need or want, or it comes in. And eventually you get to the edge of the top of the cup. And if you keep putting things in it, eventually it spills over. So the top of the cup, the rim is your threshold, right? So how much crap's in your cup, right? Are you pulling things out of the cup? Are you doing things to mitigate any of that? Or you just keep adding to the cup until eventually you hit the threshold and it spills? That's adaptive failure. That's where you get into these issues, right? So a lot of times when I treat patients or work with them with issues, it's about what's their load? What's their threshold? How close are they? So for me, it's like, how do we take crap out of the cup? How do I make the cup bigger? And how do I do those two things together so someone can get better, right? Because over time, imagine not only does the cup fill, but the cup gets smaller. So your capacity to handle stress goes down because your resilience is decreased over time, as well as the ability, the things in it. So imagine like that cup was expandable. Let's say it's like almost like a rubber cup. It starts small, right? And you add water and eventually it expands and expands. It kind of has time before it fills. As it fills, it can expand and eventually it can't expand anymore. So what if for some reason you lose that elasticity and it's a lot less expansive capability? Well, you hit threshold a lot easier. So it's about resilience too. So understand this is what leads to chronic disease. And nature may load the gun, but nurture pulls the trigger, meaning you may have some things you're predisposed to from a genetic standpoint, right? You may have some filters that don't work as well as someone else's filters, if you will, in that swimming pool. But at the end of the day, it's about what you put in that changes it. So I always tell patients when I talk, especially about gene snips, they come MTHFR, MTHFR, MTHFR. Okay, that's one gene snip about thousands, and one in a big long pathway that can be affected not just by that, but other ones. But regardless, we don't treat the SNP, we treat the patient. Because just because you have this SNP that may slow down the process, this single nucleotide polymorphism, that basically what happens when you have this one genetic change in this one DNA marker that when you transcribe the protein off of it, makes a slightly deformed enzyme. So it doesn't drive a pathway. Most of the time it slows things down, occasionally it can speed them up. But I digress. And when that happens, it can affect, how well you get from point A to point B in a catalytic transaction. So people are like, well, I have this MTHFR gene, so I must have a problem with methylation. Maybe not. I don't know. What are your symptoms? What does your blood look like? No one's looking at those things. They're just assuming, oh, you have MTHFR, here's your methylfolate, and then take this whole thing with your methylated B9 and your zinc and your B6 and your B2, and you'll be fine. Maybe. Or maybe there's other gene snips they don't know about and you're getting jammed up, or maybe you have too much of one and not enough of the other, and you're just going to kind of spin the wheel even harder and make some other problem. Like, again, the point I'm making here is that if I had two swimming pools next to each other, right, and they're both pristine, yet one is a filtered 100%, one's at 50%, does it matter? Well, in the moment, no. But when does it matter? When you put crap in the pool. And again, no matter how, after a while, someone's pool is going to get dirty no matter how good their filter is. Eventually, you can't handle the load anymore. But people have different fail points based on some genetic characteristics, and that may be one of the reasons why, I might be able to handle X amount of Y toxin while you can only handle Z amount of Y toxin, right? Maybe it's because what went into my body beforehand. Again, it's all a big picture. So it's not just a one size fits all thing. It's not like, here's your drug, right? So if you have a drug, like most of the time people have these drugs they're giving them, like you look at MS people, patients with MS. Traditional medicine, the treatment in most people is Ocrevus, all right, which is supposed to help mitigate and slow some of the symptoms. Is it a cure for MS? No. Ask any traditional medicine MS doctor, they're going to tell you there is no cure. All we can do is maybe slow it down, this chronic illness. They don't look at mitochondrial dysfunction. They don't look at what triggered it. They just think, okay, well, you got the bad luck draw. This is your genetic predisposition. It may be genetic, maybe something you inherited. We don't know. But here, unfortunately, this is where you're at. Let's do our best to mitigate symptoms by blocking pathways with a drug. And I'm not saying don't take the drug. What I'm saying is, I'm not saying, treat or not treat it. What I'm saying is that, okay, why? Why is this happening? Why did we hit a fail point? All right. What happened that at age X, you developed disease Y? I don't know. Well, you need someone to do a little science digging. But here's what I will tell you. The further you get away from what we are as a species, the more likely you're going to start having to adapt until eventually you can't adapt anymore. Until that cup, that volume thing, container becomes less resilient, fills up more, and spills. All right. So what are the things that we talk about? Well, your food, your stress levels, mental and physical mental stress levels, your physical load, right? So when we talk about, let's break it down. So we talk mental, physical, chemical, okay? Fit mental, that could be good or bad, right? All stress is stress. Look, Hansai, things like that, right? You might think, oh, I'm not stressed at all. Well, even marriage is stress. Even having a kid is stressful. Even though it's amazing joy, it can be stressful. It doesn't want to be a negative thing that causes stress. All kind of change is stressful. We are animals that change was danger, right? Change meant you were leaving safety. Okay. I'm not saying change isn't good for you. And even in short bursts, stress is helpful. Cortisol in a short period of time, which is what the stress hormone, is anti-inflammatory. In the long term, pro-inflammatory. All right. We've talked about that in some other videos. But understand that if your food changes, that's a chemical stress. What is it? We're hunter-gatherers. That's what we are. And hunter-gatherers had periods of food and not food. So they have glucose burner and ketone burner. They would eat fish, fowl, beef, pork, fruits and vegetables, some nuts and seeds a little bit, right? That's basically what they ate. Do we eat like that really now? No, we get a lot of processed foods. We got a lot of our foods aren't good. They're genetically modified. Like we've shifted our food sources so much and how we eat, and we don't starve. We rarely see a ketone. We've shifted our body's fuel sources. We've shifted the source of our food. We've overfarmed our land. We don't get the same nutrients we need that we did hundreds of years ago, even. Okay. Now you can say, well, you know what? People didn't live as long back then. You're right. Because there are things we were taking away. You take war out of it. Well, you make safety. People can live in houses and are not exposed to the elements all the time. There's less battles between little clans. Like you don't have little tribes of warring factions running around, your neighborhood most of the time, right? You're not being eaten by wild animals much anymore. And yes, sanitation and things like that have helped, right? Cleaning up our food sources to a point. But you sanitize and sterilize too much may not be a good thing either, right? You shouldn't be rubbing your hands with hand sanitizer all day. You'll actually compromise your immune system. Walk around a mask all day. That's going to be helpful for you, right? So then you start throwing in these other chemical exposures. Like, what is this I'm wearing? This is not probably a perfect 100% cotton. I don't know what I'm wearing. What was it treated with, right? What kind of detergent did I use? What did I rub on my face today? What am I brushing my teeth with? What kind of soap am I using on my body, right? What am I breathing in? Car exhaust. What kind of EMF we're exposed to that we never had exposed to before, from things like a phone to a computer to a microwave, right? And then we can go on and on and on, right? Then you throw in the things we take. Well, I take this medicine, or I don't take medicine, but you get this drug you're taking and this vaccine you're given, right? How many vaccines are given to these kids nowadays, right? And when I was a youth, I think it was 20 something, 21, 24 different vaccines we got. Now it's 84 they get before the age of 18. It's ridiculous. And all in the name of treating these diseases that they're worried about, these communicables. Yet we cause more chronics. And I'm going to be the first one to say that I believe that vaccines are contributory to these issues. Just like other drugs, all like antibiotics, which tank and bring it helps you fight this one infection. What does it do to your overall immune system and your gut? What's that food you're eating going to your gut? Gluten, dairy, soy, and these modified versions of it, and are unhealthy sources, right? Physical stress, you know, if you're, are you working out too much? Are you not giving your body enough time to recover? You know, I know some people that work out 5-7 days a week, and they're like, I'm like, why are you not taking a day off? I can't take a day off. I might shrink. Like that, there's nothing science about that. Rest is where you grow, right? People don't sleep enough. Their spines aren't correct, right? Mitigate that too with chiropractic adjustments, stretching, running. There's a place and a balance, and we don't live in balance, folks. And the more you get out of balance, the more you shift homeostasis, the balance of the system, the more likely something's going to develop. And in this case, we're talking about chronic disease and illness. This is all picking up what I'm putting down. If you are picking up what I'm putting down, put a 4 in the comments below. Let me know that you understand this, because this is what we're talking about. So when someone like RFK Jr. is out there and talking about looking for the causes of chronic illness and then trying to reverse that, well, he's looking at our food sources, right? Because what's all this crap we're eating? What, Fruit Loops don't grow on trees, right? I don't even know there's anything organic in there. The fact is, it's all processed chemicals, synthetics, dyes, things we're not supposed to be exposed to. Remember, dyes are petroleum products. No one goes around eating crude oil, right? But we eat products from that. Awesome, Susan. Thank you. So, and then we wonder what it does to the body, and we think, all right, well, how much can I take? Well, there's a load, right? I tell patients when we're talking about clean lifestyle, it's like, listen, and some people, depending on their problems and issues and how far along into a chronic illness they are, may not be able to ever eat certain foods again. But like gluten or dairy, or if you have celiac, no matter what, sometimes you've tripped over a wire so much that it's very hard to reverse it well enough. But in general, most people, if you really clean up your lifestyle and you're really good for a long period of time, that your body rebalance and reheal, then you could have a cheat occasionally. Now, our bodies are meant to handle a little bit of load, but again, how much is left in your cup? So if you're good 98% of the time and have an occasional bad thing, you can bounce back from that, right? It's when you're good when you're bad 98% of the time and have a 2% of the time good, you think you're going to get well. It's not going to work that way. That's why I talk to people about diets. Like, true diets don't work. Lifestyle change works. Why does a diet not work? Well, what is a diet, right? People don't go on diets just for the heck of it. They go on diets because they want to lose weight, right? So if you've gained weight, it's a crappy lifestyle most likely that's led to part of that. So, or most of it. So what is a diet? Well, a diet's a short thing you do to lose weight, so that way when you've lost the weight you've lost, you want to go back to your crappy lifestyle. So you can gain the weight again to go on a diet. Do you see the problem here? And people spend more time in the crappy lifestyle than they do in the lifestyle change. So lifestyle change is a big thing, right? Where it's about shifting what you eat, how you behave, what you do. And listen, you're not going to be able to cut it all out ever, right? You can just do your best to minimize. You can make yourself neurotic or crazy about it, and that'll give you a different stress, right? If you overthink it too much and you're trying to avoid anything and everything that could have a possible toxin in it, in all the top products, and you're stressed so much about it, guess what you're going to do? You give yourself a different load of stress, a mental stress instead of a chemical stress. That's not to say that they're always an even one-to-one exchange. I'm just saying that there's got to be balance. Your cup can have some stuff in it. It doesn't have to be completely empty, but we want it to be a resilient cup that hasn't lost that elasticity and that is very low to the bottom. And if we can make it even bigger, overall, the better. And that's really what chronic disease comes from. It's about moving away from the optimal version of what we're supposed to be. So what are the reasons we expanded our ages? Yes, we were able to help eliminate some of these things like we talked about before. But why are the generation being born now going to be the first generation that doesn't outlive their parents? And I don't mean like they're dying before their parents die. My point is, like, their life expectancy is supposed to be smaller than that of the generation right before them. And that's a scary thought. And this is what they're telling us. This is not just me making stuff up. And it's because we've done too much. We've pushed the envelope too far away, and we haven't come back enough that we're losing that ability. Listen, our telomeres tell us we can live to 120. So if 77 and a third, or whatever it was, it's like 76 years now, I think, for the younger generation. We still haven't gotten close to hitting our our average maximum. Like 120 should be our aspirational. We should be averaging 100, 110 and a high quality of life. And why not? Just because you're living longer doesn't mean we're living better, right? We want to have quantity of life with quality, right? If you're living to 85 and not 70, but those last 10 years of your life, you're basically a mess. You can't move, you can't think, is that really quality of life just because you live longer? Like, listen, my dad passed just over a year ago, and he was 80 and a half years old, right? No, what year is this? 84. He was about to turn 82. He was 81 and a half. All right. But the last 4 years of his life weren't great, especially the last 2. So I would argue that, that extra quantity of life was not necessarily worth that. Right. We want to live at optimal levels. And when I talk to patients, it's like you build and build from 18 to 20 years old. And then you stay at the plateau of life for 20 to 30, 35, and then you slowly go down. Well, no, I want to stay here, man. I don't want to even be up here. And then maybe at 95, 100 years old, I hit a tree or something skiing. You know what I mean? The point is, why do we decline? Well, because the goal is to get us off the earth. But I want the decline to be later in life, not early, not at 40. Not so you're at 77, you're not doing great and dying. Like, you want to be a vibrant older person. And part of that has to do with you treat your body. And the more you can mitigate the stressors, the load throughout your life, the earlier the better, and the more complete the better chance you have of not developing something. So I don't want to wait. I don't want to wait to find out what I got, right? I'd rather stop it all now, do everything preventative I can to minimize the load on my system, so I had a better bet to live longer, healthier, and not develop one of these chronic illnesses. My goal is to be 80 something years old, not be on a single pill that's not a supplement, right? I'd like to live. I want to max out that telomere, and I want to do it in a way where this is still working, not my hair, my brain. Lost that a long time ago, the hair, not my brain. And be able to have a really healthy, happy, functional life. So if you're someone out there dealing with chronic illness or illness and you'd like some help to deal with it a little bit differently, because at the end of the day, there's no cure from the medical establishment. It's really just mitigating symptoms and ameliorating symptoms. And my goal is to say, all right, well, that may be fair to do that. Are we over-treating things, thyroid, instead of getting to the root causes? Because root causes is not traditionally how medicine is, right? Even the way we used to treat communicable diseases was never about root cause, because they were thinking the cause was this outside thing, this germ. And the germ, yes, is real, but it's about the soil that allowed the germ to germinate, if you will. It's not about the seed, it's about the soil. Because why is someone sick next to me? I'm not sick. Or why is the mom healthy, but everyone else in the house is sick? Because her immune system's in a better spot and it's able to fight things off. Listen, every surface of our body is covered in viruses, bacteria, and fungi. There's more things that are on us and in us than are us. Okay. But why are we in balance with it? Because we're in immunostasis and homeostasis with our environment. When we try to mess with that too much, that's when things get out of whack and we get sick. So when you put too much load on the system, the body's immune system can't handle it. Something gets in, it has to try to right the ship. You get sick and then you get better. All right. So even the drugs that people are given to help stop the communicable diseases, a lot of times are in the end of the game, instead of looking at why the person got sick. It's about let's just treat the symptom and how it got sick. No, let's take a chance of give them an antibody through a vaccine, so that way if they do get exposed to it, they can't get sick. Well, how about we teach that immune system to be as healthy as it can, so you don't get sick that way? And if you do, you have a mild case of whatever it may be. So anyway, that's my story for tonight. So for those of you who again came in, if you came in late, go back and watch the replay live. Go back and watch the replay. For those of you watching along, we really appreciate you. And if you found this interesting or helpful, please feel free to share this out. Put it on your page, or have a message in a group, in a post, whatever. And with that, I will take a second just to put our last of our information up here. So this is our link tree. And you can follow us at all our socials. And with that, I will say all good night. Let me just get to my exit little screen here. And here we go. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, share. As always, I am Dr. Ketone. Have a great night. We'll see you all in the next video. And Dr. Ketone.